Good morning. Again, it's nice to be on stage without unwanted visitors. It's an honor to be on the stage following Doron's powerful tribute to Ophir. I want to acknowledge all of the heroes of Israel that we heard from: Tzvi and Dorit, Reder, Nasri and Youssef. Doron on behalf of Ophir Libstein. Let's be honest, Richie Torres is a hero of Israel. And I want to thank all of you for being heroes for Israel. Thank you, AJC, for being here with us for what has been an extraordinary global forum. I'm so grateful to have spent 2.5 days with you during the most challenging moment for our community and for Israel in my lifetime. Since October 7th, we at AJC have acted boldly and passionately to defend the Jewish state and Jewish people from diplomatic attacks on Israel and violent anti-Semitism around the world. I'm so incredibly proud of the way that every single professional at AJC has stepped up to this fight. For so many of my AJC colleagues, this work is not just a job. It is a sacred mission. The dedication has been on full display over these past 3 days and in the months of preparation before Global Forum. And I'd like to thank the following people for making this conference what it has been. I want to thank please hold your applause. I want to thank the entire global events team led by Daniel Silver and Leslie Cleon and Claire Bailey, Alex Rubin, Myra Stein, Kelly Mahoney, and Lindsay Siegel, and of course the incomparable contributions made by Bel Yoeli, and with thanks to honorary team member Bonnie Gluck. I want to thank the marketing communications team led by John Schweitzer here. I want to thank the development team here at Global Forum led by Lital Weinzoff and Sarah Whitko, the leadership team here led by Joanna Lieberman-Sneer, to the entire policy and political affairs team who worked so hard on our advocacy and action lunches and this afternoon's Hill meetings, to the Alexander Young Leadership Global Forum team, my senior management team, OCEO team, Casey Custon, Jack Steinberg, and Dustin Hausner, to all of my colleagues who worked so hard on multiple aspects of the program and who worked the registration and the help desk and the transportation team, our AJC mailroom colleagues who dealt with printing and shipping and so many logistics, led by Amy Magdalene and Mike Bacozzo, all of my colleagues who staffed this conference. I am so grateful, and I hope that all of you will now join me in thanking our AJC professionals for everything they do, especially since October 7th. And of course, none of the work that we do at AJC is possible without our committed leadership. That is particularly true for Global Forum. So I want to thank AJC President and my partner, Michael Tickner, the Executive Council as well for their support, all of the AJC leaders who chaired and introduced sessions at Global Forum. I want to thank Bobby Lapin and the Board of Governors, Stephen Wish and the Board of Trustees, the regional presidents and regional board members who are here, all of you for being here, all of you for being here and supporting AJC during this critical time for our community, and to all of the leaders across the country and around the world who could not be here and who are watching online and are with us today in spirit. To all of these leaders, I extend my deep gratitude. And I'd like to express and acknowledge the incredible work of AJC professionals, especially from our 25 regional offices, for some of the things that I will recount and so many more. For launching a community anti-Semitism summit in San Diego that's being replicated around the country. For working to adopt the IRA working definition of anti-Semitism and passing it into law in the Pacific Northwest, across the Northeast, and in South Florida. For mobilizing against BDS efforts in Seattle and in Chicago, and for hosting hostage families to make sure the stories of their loved ones are heard everywhere around the country and around the world, and so much more. Every single day, since October 7th has been gut-wrenching. When AJC met with President Herzog in his office in Jerusalem just weeks after the October 7th attack, one of our participants in the meeting asked him, "What should we do? What would you like us to do?" And he looked at us and he had a one-word answer: everything. Everything. Well, that's what AJC has tried to do every day since, with urgency. And I know that we all feel that sense of urgency. Remember, the wave of global anti-Israel hatred that we've witnessed was not in response to Israel's war against Hamas. The mask came off the night of October 7th, the morning of October 8th, while Hamas terrorists were still invading communities, murdering Israelis, taking captives, before a single Israeli soldier, before a single heroic Israeli soldier entered Gaza. We saw protests of our hostages. We saw protests around the country, our hostage posters violently torn down in our cities and on our campuses. The comparison of Israel to Nazis in Gaza, to Auschwitz. The lies that Israel is a white settler colonialist regime, that it's an apartheid state. South Africa's outrageous case at the International Court of Justice, charging that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. The ICC prosecutor's appalling decision to hold on the same level the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister of Israel and the leader of a genocidal terror organization. Countries have broken relations with Israel. They've banned Israeli tourists. They've boycotted Israeli companies. These slanderous attacks have led to Israel's increasing isolation on the world stage. And all the while, the world too often has looked away from the real source of instability in the region and in the world, the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran funds Hamas. They fund Hezbollah. They fund the Houthis, terror organizations across the Middle East. Iran continues to enrich its nuclear program. They launched 300 drones and missiles in an unprecedented attack against Israel. And Iran targets Jewish communities around Europe and around the world. That's why AJC's real and coordinated global action to counter Iran urge the EU and countries around the world to designate the IRGC as the terrorist organization that it is, has been so important. And it's why we're proud to have successfully urged the IAEA Board of Governors to censure Iran for its escalating enrichment of uranium just last week. AJC has mobilized our entire global architecture to fight back and to support Israel everywhere in the world. In the days after October 7th, we came together, so many of us here came together and created the Israel Emergency Fund and raised $5.5 million in just days for Israeli NGOs providing essential services to the Israeli people. We modified our flagship Project Interchange program, which brings non-Jewish leaders to Israel to organize fact-finding missions for journalists, for European parliamentarians, for social media influencers, so that they can understand what's actually happening on the ground in war-torn Israel. I've led leadership missions to Germany and Chile and Japan and Korea, in addition to Israel several times since October 7th, to rally prime ministers and foreign ministers, other high-level government officials, to condemn Hamas terror, to reaffirm their country's support of Israel, and to maintain moral clarity around what happened on October 7th, that they should always remember that Hamas is to blame for the war Israel is in, that Israel has the right to defend itself. My AJC colleagues around the world have done this same work every single day. AJC Paris and then the Africa Institute have enhanced ties between Israel and French-speaking African countries. Our Belfer Institute for Latino Latin American Affairs organized its annual strategic forum in Santiago for 110 Jewish leaders from 13 countries to reaffirm our continued fight against anti-Semitism. And of course, our office here in DC has continued to engage every day with ambassadors and with diplomats, so many of whom you've met and engaged in meaningful diplomacy with, even just yesterday. And that's just a sample of the work that AJC does to maintain support for Israel all around the world, and it's work that we've done for the past 8 months. Here in America, we've engaged the highest levels of the administration to ensure American support for Israel, to make sure that it maintains the current ironclad status even in an election year. We're working with members of Congress to advocate for bipartisan pro-Israel legislation, and we are pushing back against the extreme anti-Israel voices in our politics, those anti-Israel voices who too often sound very much like what we heard on our stage from those protesters. Our 25 regional offices work with elected officials to block outrageous ceasefire resolutions in city councils and state legislatures, and they advocate in consulates to shore up international support for Israel. And our communications team is pushing back against the outrageous misinformation and disinformation, the slanders against Israel that have inundated our society, our social media, and our media, that is, our newspapers who have failed us. And since October 7th, our pro-Israel messaging has reached over 75 million people on social media. That's one of the ways we're responding. But still, too many ignore the fact that there are still 120 hostages, including 8 Americans, suffering in Hamas captivity. It's been 249 days. 249 days, and in too many parts of the world and in too many parts of this country, still there is silence that we fight against. We've organized more than 330 meetings, more than 330 meetings with hostage families to share their stories in Washington, in New York, in Rome, in Paris, all around the world. Early in the war, we organized an event on Capitol Hill for Noam Perry, whose 79-year-old father, Chaim, a peace activist, was taken hostage on October 7th. Noam's message for my former colleagues was simple. I just want to see my father again. Tragically, we found out a week and a half ago that Chaim was murdered by Hamas. But we have echoed Noam's messages around the world that while Israel is at war and it is aiming to eradicate a genocidal terrorist organization, it is also a war to bring our family home. We want to bring our family home. We've had the opportunity to hear directly from Omer Nutra's family, his parents, Orna and Ronan. We've met so many hostage families in our work as they've come to your communities. I've had the opportunity of getting to know a number of them, including Rachel Goldberg and John Poland, as they lead the fight to bring their son Hirsch and all of the hostages home. Rachel, and some of you I'm sure have heard her say this, Rachel says she gets up every morning. She gets up every morning and runs to the end of the earth to help bring Hirsch home. That's the same approach that we need to take. And we are. The work AJC is doing around the world to fight anti-Semitism and to advocate for Israel is critical and it is impactful. 2 days ago, I stood on this stage with leaders of dozens of communities from around the world as we launched AJC's global call to combat anti-Semitism. Well, last week, marking the 80th anniversary of D-Day, President Biden and France's President Macron, as home to the two largest Jewish communities outside of Israel, announced that the US and France will form an annual dialogue to combat anti-Semitism. Building on the commitment of those two presidents, I am proud to announce that AJC is partnering with the CRIF, the umbrella organization gathering French Jewish organizations and institutions, to create an annual transatlantic summit on combating anti-Semitism, to bring together leaders, experts, and advocates to ensure greater international cooperation in the fight against anti-Semitism. Here's the point. We need to be transformative. We need to do more to ensure a secure and prosperous Israel can thrive, not just in the coming weeks, but in the coming years. Right now, policymakers are focusing on the day after in Gaza, and these are important conversations that we're also a part of. But more than that, at AJC, we're focused on the decade after, for Israel, for the region, and for the world. We have the relationships, we have the know-how, we have the diplomatic skills to build bridges, because AJC has spent decades laying the foundation for regional integration. We've been visiting the Gulf of North Africa for over 3 decades. Let's be honest, Jason Isaacs has been visiting the Gulf for over 3 decades. And in that work that Jason and Benji and the team do, we've been building relationships necessary for what eventually became the Abraham Accords. Our office in Abu Dhabi makes us the only global Jewish organization with a permanent presence in an Arab country. And our work deepening Israel's relationships around the world has not stopped since October 7th. We've organized 5 off-the-record discussions in the region and here in Washington, bringing together Israeli, Arab, and Palestinian leaders to work together to chart a more cooperative future. Our Asia-Pacific Institute and Interreligious Affairs Department has continued building relations and building bridges in Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world, by bringing the Grand Imam of Indonesia's national mosque to New York to participate in a fellowship on Judaism and interreligious understanding. And we just convened the AJC Cincinnati Business Collective to bring together Israeli, Arab, and Ohio innovators to generate business connections that can help strengthen the foundations for Arab-Israeli peace. The region has a choice between 2 competing visions: the death and destruction sought by Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah, and the vision of peace and prosperity and shared values that AJC has so long advocated. And with intense cooperation among our offices in DC, Jerusalem, and Abu Dhabi, close partnership between our professionals and lay leaders, and yes, with greater resources, I know that AJC can shape a positive future for Israel and the region, and it is for that reason that today AJC is announcing the establishment of AJC's Center for a New Middle East, led by Jason, which the center will help AJC scale our innovative programming, maximize the impact of our work to help create a new Middle East for Israel, for its growing number of partners and allies, so that they can stand with U.S. leadership as a bulwark against Iran and its proxies. We will spearhead more transformative programs, more international conferences bringing together regional change makers, more people-to-people programs to break down barriers, and more AJC project interchange delegations to show regional leaders the real face of Israel. We will help, AJC will help create a more interconnected, prosperous, and peaceful Middle East. I ask your help for us to do it. Let us work together as AJC helps to build a new Middle East. Now, 1 year ago at Global Forum, AJC dedicated our national team and regional offices to boldly fighting anti-Semitism and implementing the national strategy. We've helped the U.S. Conference of Mayors take concrete steps to counter anti-Semitism in their communities. We've worked with the Small Business Administration to empower businesses to combat anti-Semitism. We've partnered with entities across every level of government all across the country to help implement the national anti-Semitism strategy. We've led the charge to ensure that Jewish American Heritage Month is acknowledged everywhere, from boardrooms to city halls to, yes, the Google Calendar. We are expanding our work to combat anti-Semitism online and in the media, and it is time, and you will help make this so, it is time for Congress to pass the Combating Anti-Semitism Act so that there is always a presence at the White House and the Department of Education who will work with AJC to fight anti-Semitism. So I ask you to think back 249 days. Israel was brutally attacked, over 1,200 murdered, more than 250 hostages taken. The civilized world was on edge. Israel was clearly on edge. The global Jewish community felt at risk. Then what did we see immediately? We saw swastikas on Times Square, crowds in Sydney chanting "Gas to Jews," a near pogrom at the Russian airport, kosher restaurants vandalized, synagogues burned, Jewish schools shot at. On Sunday, here in our nation's capital, we saw violent protests outside the White House. And something horrifying has been happening on college campuses. A professor calling the deadliest day for the Jewish people exhilarating. University presidents saying the calls for the genocide of Jews do not violate their codes of student conduct. Jewish students attacked, intimidated, targeted at encampments. Protests erupted across the U.S. that put Jewish students very much at risk as they were told, go back to Poland. And they were told by others that they wished that October 7th would happen 100 more times, 1,000, 10,000 more times. Israeli students were shoved and harassed because of their nationality. Hamas flags and Palestinian Islamic Jihad headbands, calls for the destruction of Israel and the death of Zionists on campus quads. We heard from Noah and Hannah, AJC's Campus Global Board, the European Union of Jewish Students, the World Union of Jewish Students, just these past couple of days, that the problem on campus is real and it is serious. My friends, what's happening on our college campuses can never be accepted as normal. Anti-Semitism and anti-Israel protests throughout our education system represent a singular challenge for the Jewish people, not just today, not only this summer, next semester, next academic year, but for the foreseeable future. Today's college students are tomorrow's business leaders. They're the tech founders. They're the political leaders of our country. The future of our community, of our nation, and yes, of our liberal democracy is at stake. That is why today I want to make another announcement. I'm proud to announce the establishment of AJC's Center for Education Advocacy to dramatically scale our efforts to ensure that Jews and Zionists on campus never, never need to be afraid again. We do so much already. It is time to scale it and to make real change. How do we do it? AJC's Campus Global Board and our Leaders for Tomorrow program will empower a strong and resilient and effective generation of young Jewish leaders. AJC's Empowered Parent programs across the country will give more parents the tools that they need to be the best advocates for our community and for their students. AJC's Project Interchange trips for heads of school, for faculty, for university presidents will expose them to the truth and the complexity of the Jewish state. We will partner with more non-Jewish leaders standing with our campus community, and we will lift up our university trustees who speak with moral clarity. AJC's academic team will ramp up our engagement with presidents, with provosts, with other administrators, giving them the tools to transform their campuses, making certain things perfectly clear, that there must be accountability when students violate codes of student conduct and harass and intimidate students, that harming students and that banning students from joining clubs because they belong to the Jewish faith and because they are Zionists, that's discrimination that must be acted against, and that faculty members who intimidate Jewish students must be held accountable. So why the focused attention on education advocacy right now? Because our universities cannot just hope that the situation on campus will change on its own over the summer, or that it will disappear when the war in Gaza ends. We know that the anti-Semites, that the anti-Zionists on campus and in K-12 have been hard at work for decades. It is time to join the battle comprehensively and boldly. The idea that we are forced to sit back and accept that this is just what it means to be a Jewish student in America, in the world today, is flat out wrong. We must and we can transform our educational environments so that Jews and Zionism can thrive, and every single university and in every K-12 school setting, Jews and Zionists will be welcome and safe. This is the generational challenge that we face. The future of education, its contribution to liberal democracy. We have a foundational gift to help launch the center. I ask you to help us build on it. This is our moment. We need your help. These are big ideas and big plans because that's what this moment demands, especially from American Jewish Committee. And before I close our Global Forum, I want to acknowledge how we are feeling. We came to Global Forum because we thought it was important to be together. I don't think we imagined how desperately we needed to be together. It is easy to feel hopeless right now, but the isolation that we may feel doom-scrolling social media in our homes in Australia or South Africa, in Atlanta or Kansas City, France or Argentina, that can be overcome. How? By joining together as one unified Jewish community where we stand together and declare to the world that we don't need permission to be proud Jews and proud Zionists. That is who we are. We don't. In 10 years, in 50 years, they're going to write the history of this moment. They're going to talk about the world since October 7th and the history of the Jewish community following the deadliest attack on our people since the Holocaust. On October 6th, that story was being written was one that was about division and strife. But the story of our people since 10/7 is a story of unity because we are fighting back. When Rachel Goldberg says that she gets up every morning and runs to the end of the earth, advocating for Hirsch, the least we can do is run to the end of the earth, advocating for Israel and the Jewish people. And when the president of Israel, just weeks after October 7th, looks a group of AJC leaders in the eye and tells us to do everything, that's what we do. If you are part of this incredible gathering, or if you're watching online, that is my message to all of you. On Sunday, Stephen Wish stood up here and said that we hope to raise $1 million while we're here, and I'm grateful to say that we have now raised over $1.5 million. Beyond that, dozens Dozens of you have come up to me, let alone my entire staff, all of my colleagues. Dozens of you have come up to me to tell me that you intend to become more involved in AJC, that this is the place where you want to come to work with us to create a world where every Jew can live proudly and securely, where Israel can flourish, where our shared values will sustain us. Everything. That's what we need to do to secure the future of Israel and the Jewish people. Everything to defend Israel, everything to fight anti-Semitism, everything to transform education in this country and in the world, and everything to build a new Middle East. Everything to maintain the unity of the Jewish people. Thank you to all of you. In every one of our 25 offices, all of our 15 international posts, every AJC board, commission, institute, wherever you're involved, we will work with you, with your talent, with your passion, with your resources. Whether you're a seasoned leader or a college student who is getting involved with us for the very first time, standing up for Israel, standing up for the Jewish people, this is our moment. I want to thank, again, I want to thank our leaders, Michael and Bobby and Stephen. I want to thank Jill Deutch. And I want to thank all of you for being here today, for helping to make this year's Global Forum so powerful and such a strong statement about where we will go together. Always remember this. Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Bazeh. We are all responsible one for another. That is true today. That is true tomorrow. It is true forever. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you for being here. Chag Sameach. And in just a moment, we'll have the privilege of a performance by the incomparable Matisyahu. But first, I would ask Michael and Karen and Bobby and Eve, Stephen and Debbie, Jill, all of my AJC colleagues, please join me on the stage as we sing Hatikva. I know people are running to buses. It's worth it to stand together to sing Hatikva. Please come on up.